And we're live, and we are live. Come on in, everyone. Come on in. Come on in. Welcome to another edition of Tuesday Talk. We have some amazing guests this evening. When you enter into the space, just let us know where you are coming in from. And I'm waiting for some people to get the notification that we're live. Come on in, people. Was that a little dog in the background?
Just some action going on in the temple. That's all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I miss my dog. She's a beagle mix. She's a rescue dog and she
Mm.
hunts all the time. And we take her outside and likes to find dead squirrels and
Mm.
chipmunks, much to our pleasure.
Bringing home the treasures, huh?
Oh my goodness. Oh my yes, Cheryl, post in all the groups. Yes. Yes. Jason, if you could text Cheryl and tell her to post to all the groups, that would be great. Come on in, people. I see you are letting us know where you are coming in from. Come on in. This is great. You get to see the far and wide reach of the Shrine of Ma'at, of Tuesday Talk, of people who are living in an African centered space, an African spiritual centered space, a Kemetic centered space, and it's great. So come on in, everyone. Come on in. Let me see where the good people are from. Tristan Johnson, 999, Grandest of Risings, Ohanru. Thank you, Tristan. He put that post early this morning when I was working on creating the link and stuff. I saw him. It was pretty awesome. And we have Photographum, piece from Memphis, Tennessee. From Memphis, yes. We have Big Man 29 from Los Angeles, California. Are there any Lakers fans in the house besides me? Come through, come through. We've got Christian Hotep family, peace and blessings. Peace and blessings to you as well. Hotep. Hotep means peace and it means offerings. It's such a peaceful word. We're going to bring that peace back to the actual word peace. That's what we're going to do. Correct me if I'm wrong. Itai Brown Heron, my aunt Hotep, hailing from Brooklyn, New York. Is Brooklyn in the house? And the answer is yes. We've
Mm.
got hello, Lynn Umbutu. She is a member of the Shrine of Ma'at, Ankh Ma'at. Christian coming in from Greensboro, North Carolina. D. Fulton Peace from Nightdale, North Carolina. Come on in. And we have Sakina Ra, a member of the Shrine of Ma'at, coming in from South Dakota. How many Black people do you know in South Dakota? I know one, and now you know one. And okay, we've got Lynn Mbutu from Hyattsville, Maryland. We got New York City in the house, Mobile. Okay, we have Guyana, our first international person for tonight. Thank you, thank you. And London, here we go, here we go. Neophyte Sage is from London. Come on in. Thank you so much to everybody who's joining us from Tuesday Talk. Tonight we have some really great guests this evening. We have two brothers who are members of the Earth Center. For those of you who follow Tuesday Talk, you know that this platform is for those of us who want to live a Kemetically, spiritually centered life, an African spiritual centered life, and about Pan-Africanism. And when we bring guests on, it's to get the education and to get the practical tools so that you can practice it and live it. And so tonight we have Kajzrimem and Kenibashu Saikaptah, and they are both from the Earth Center. Last year, we had Tutipsa from the Earth Center as we discussed the sidereal calendars and timekeeping and note taking are so very important. And maybe it's my, recognition of that. Maybe that's one of the reasons that Intepi Anika and Intepi Jabari gave me the name Sashat. And she is the record keeper in Kemetic spirituality. Okay, so tonight we have these great guests here who are going to explain that to us. So before we get started, let's have a little bit of a background on the Earth Center. Kenibashu, can you just start with that, and you can join in as well, and letting us know, what is the Earth Center? When was it founded? Let us know what it is.
All right. Greetings to everyone. Greetings to all the guests who are online tonight. Thank you. We say duao. Thank you to the Shrine of Ma'at for having us tonight. It's really an honor to be here to disseminate this knowledge to, the larger groups. So again, my name is Kenibashu Saikaptah. I'm a part of the second generation of the New Jersey temples. So before I start, I just want to recognize and acknowledge and give thanks to all of our ancestors,
Mm-hmm.
all of those who came before us, all of those who are standing by our side and making sure that, we're able to do this work and that we are able to continue to bring honor and dignity to this work that our ancestors have preserved for us. Um, and a special thanks and acknowledgement to our master Nebnabala Musa Monodenebe, the founder of the Earth Center. So the Earth Center formally is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is based in promoting and preserving the Kemetic lifestyle. There's so many things that go into that. We have projects that help to preserve that lifestyle back home in West Africa, where we are paying our respects to the elders that live there and making sure that those ways of life that they are trying to preserve from development over there. There's projects that we have that help to, keep those things alive. And then on this side, the Earth Center functions through a few branches. So first, there is MTOM, the MTOM schools, which is the branch that deals with education. So on that branch, we have the 3 classes that we offer: the Medu, which is learning to read, write, and speak, and what the Greeks call the hieroglyphs or the holy text. We call it Medu. Medu Ma'it is the language that was given to us by the divine.
That's right.
And with that, there's so much benefit in that connection to nature, because all of the, I'm sure if any of us have ever seen what we call hieroglyphs, you see the nature in it. You see the connection to nature. You see the birds. You see the stones. You see the trees. You see the leaves. You see things that are present in nature. So, it's really beneficial for a human being to have that connection to something that's natural. Uh,
That's right.
in that class, in all of the classes, half of it is a lecture portion, and then the other half is practical. Sometimes some classes do go a full 2 hours of lecture, but we always try to make sure that, again, like you said, Abu, that it's more than important that we know how to practice these things and how to make them practical in our everyday lives. So, that's the Medu. Then we have the Kativi, which is the original forms of what we know as yoga or meditation.
Mm-hmm.
That class is really about learning to assess the non-material parts of the human being. So, again, just a lot of information that is split into sections, one lecture, and then the practical part of it. And then we have the Sum class, which is the healing class. And in uh, that class is really amazing because you start to see how the first two classes become very much so applicable in your everyday life. So those are the three classes that the MTOM school offers, and that's uh, a short, concise understanding of the first branch. Then the second branch is the public publishing house. We have Rising Firefly, and Rising Firefly is where we publish the books that were written by our master Nabala Musamoto Denebig.
Okay.
We have the Hedge Tower, was a book, which is a book of traditional stories, or what some people would like to call folk tales or myths. But just to be very clear, they're real stories that have been passed down time
Okay.
after time after time after time after time. And, because they've been preserved so well, it may seem like they're, very fictional or, so mysterious, but these are real stories. So, yeah, we also have the Rising Firefly magazines that come through Rising Firefly, the publication. And yeah, that's where we do a lot of our publications, and that's how we disseminate knowledge on a more public, level, so
Mhm.
that people have access to it. Um, and then the last branch is more so of what I was speaking about in the beginning.
Mhm.
Projects of Merita is the branch that deals with the projects that the Earth Center does to, it's our charitable branch. So with
Okay.
that, we accept, donations and things like that to help preserve the culture back home so that they have an understanding that they have something that's valuable to us, and they can serve as a bridge for people like us in the West who want to be a part of their culture, but they also understand that we have to help, one another. So projects of Medita is really how we make sure that our efforts are going towards actually helping the people who have preserved all of these things that
Right.
we're
Right.
able to share with the world. So in a nutshell, that's the Earth Center.
Okay. And thank you for that explanation. I'm glad that you broke it down into the three different sections. And it is very important to support those of our family who are in on the continent who are preserving the culture. And from my research from last year and from speaking with Tutipsa from last year, there's even more as it relates to the preservation of the culture. And we're going to get to that towards the end. And it's something that we definitely need to give its due time to, because it's important to recognize what we have been able to maintain despite colonization and despite enslavement and like a worldwide program to try to get us to remember who we are. And then you find some of us who never forgot, so we're definitely going to make sure that's definitely well known.
Mhm.
So Kajzrimem, I'm sorry, can you tell me your name one more time? I practice it all day, y'all.
So, all right, I get that a lot. A lot of people have, trouble getting accustomed to saying my name, but it's Kajzrimem.
Kajzrimem.
Yeah.
Kajzrimem. Yes. Okay, so Kajzrimem, can you let us know, how did you get into Kemetic spirituality through the Earth Center? What were your religious or spiritual practices before?
Um, I would say, growing up in a Jamaican household, I was in some way brought up Christian,
Mm.
um, Baptist, uh, Protestant, but I never really subscribed to any of those things, even from a very young age. I was always a child that was always questioning
Mhm.
this, so I had to do that. So religion for me never really made any sense. And as I got older and I went to school, history class was like my favorite class. So I dived really deep into history a lot, and then I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, and then diving so deep into history, it took me to the history of enslavement,
Mm-hmm.
colonization, and I found that religion was actually a tool used to kind of like oppress,
That's right.
our people. So definitely from there, I definitely didn't want anything to do with it. So I don't think I was ever really in any kind of religious organization or had any religious beliefs. But I did find the Bible somewhat useful, as I could see there was some kind of practicalities in some of the things it was talking about. But as I got older, I just dived into research and history, and then I started to dive into people like Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, Chancellor Williams, studying those people. And I learned a lot about Kemetic history, Kemetic philosophy, and then me kind of like knowing a little bit about the Bible, I started to like realize and piece things together. Like, okay, this is where that comes from. Okay, I see where they got this from. So it kind of just piqued my interest, and from there, I just started to just research more and more and more and more. And then at that point, I was just really just trying to find somewhere to fit myself
Mm-hmm.
to. So I just kept questioning things, and then it's a very interesting story. I used to work at a restaurant, and at this restaurant, there was a book that I had found, and it turned out to be a Masonic book. Interestingly enough, no one knew where the book came from.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I asked everyone in the restaurant whose book it was, no one could tell me. Tried to, put out, okay, lost and found. No one came and got the book. So I just ended up reading the book. The book said some very interesting things, confirmed some things for me, and I was like, okay. So that means there's mystery school thing was like, it's real. It's a very real thing.
Uh-huh.
So interestingly enough, after I read through the entire book, I found a video of an initiate discussing some things, and some of the things he was discussing piqued my interest. And from there, I just called the Earth Center, and that was it.
Mm. Interesting. I wonder where that book came from. That's
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah,
It's truly a mystery, but it was there for a reason.
that's right.
It got you where you needed to be. That's interesting. I've never, I ask people this question when they come on to Tuesday Talk or just in general conversation, but it sounds like you just kind of made the decisions yourself and looked to yourself and then
Mm,
found this book that was sent to you by the divine, obviously.
mm,
And then you called the Earth Center. I've never heard that where it was really just you
mm.
looking and finding until you got it. That's interesting. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Kenibashu, how did you get into the Earth Center and how did you get into African spiritual practice?
Mhm. So for me, uh, a little bit before the birth of my first son, I have been doing a lot of research just into trying to find out the truth about a lot of things. Uh, because since high school, and seeing certain, documentaries about like the zeitgeist, um, I really just had an interest for figuring out the truth about so many things that are shrouded in this sense of obscurity,
Mhm.
and that seem like nobody really knows what it is. uh, what most people would call like conspiracy theories and things like that. So one of the theories that I came across, or not even a theory, just some research that I ended up stumbling upon, was that the Dogon had found the Sirius star, and that there were some scholars from you know Austria or whatever, wherever they were from. They went and they talked to the Dogon, and they told them that the star was there, and they didn't need telescopes or anything like that to be able to know that that star was there, and it was a very important star. So from there, I was getting into comedic yoga and things like that, and I just started researching the Dogon. But the very interesting thing about all of that research was that it was about the Dogon, but it was never from the Dogon.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so frustrating to kind of be roped around each time, with this sort of just washed over explanation of what these people were about and who these people are, which is why I continually give thanks to the Prophet Nebnabal Musa Motothinibe uh, for bringing this knowledge, for being the one to decide, that people are in need of this knowledge. People are in need of this initiation, this rite of passage into life. Um, so yeah, one day I was working my normal nine to five, and I'm at a Chinese food store, and this lady, I'm walking out, she's walking in, and she hands me a flyer. Well, she says, "Can I give you something?" And my first thought is like, well, I don't know this lady. I don't know what she's trying to give me. But I'm just like, okay, whatever. Yeah, no problem. So she goes to her car. She rustles around for a few minutes. I'm thinking about walking off. And I'm like, let me just wait. Let me just be patient. And she comes back with a flyer about a lecture on family values, and I read the rest of the information, and it says by the Dogon, and I was like, wow, okay. So I took it home to my wife, and I would always share my wife and I. We always share our findings on different things, and when she saw it, she was like, we definitely have to go to this. And we had just had our first son, so it was everything worked out perfectly. We went to the lectures. There was a lecture series on
Mm-hmm.
values, and it was just so practical. Like, it made so much sense. The way that it was presented, it never seemed like it was just information. It was things very practical, very simple, but very uh, pivotal, like to being able to live a good life as a family.
Mm-hmm.
All of the values that were presented, I saw the practicality of them in my life right away. So we were we were ready from then, and the rest is history.
Hmm. It seems like with both of your stories, the similarity is when the student was ready, the information appeared to bring you to the teacher
Mm-hmm.
because you were just on your path and the information came to you. I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
That Thank you for sharing that. I don't think I've heard, that story before. Kajzrimem, can you give us the title of the book? We have a question from MF Dreadson. I'm sorry, what was the book title? If you could put it in the chat, or if you can say it, and then Jason or send Jason or Sinette, Cheryl, if you could put it in the chat. Thank you for sharing that. My story is a lot less dramatic than that, where you have like this mystery person giving you information or finding a book. I basically was a Christian. I was sick of the lies, and when I moved to New York, I was volunteering at an organization, and I met Anika, and I saw her joyari, right? I saw all the bling, and I was like, that's different than jewelry. I need to know what that is and who she is. That's my story in a quick nutshell, but I don't want to focus on me, but that was my story. So let's dive into this calendar. But before we dive into the calendar, put in the chat and let me know, what is a calendar? Like, what does a calendar do? A calendar tells you the year, it tells you the day, it gives you the date, it tells you how many days there are in a year, and it breaks it up into months and weeks, right? And so from that, we have our calendar that everybody in the world at this point in time, this is the one that everyone follows. And when your appointments are, when your homework's due, when your voter registration's due, like light bill, everything. It's centered around this calendar. And we do need organization like that so that we can all function in some kind of synchronicity in terms of what to expect from someone, when and why. But is it really the year 2023?
Hmm.
And what does that, and what does 2023 mean? Because I know Black people have been on the planet longer than 2023 years. I know that for a fact. We've been on here, we the oldest. And it doesn't go back to 2023. So let's start with the present calendar that we have. And can either of you shed some light on this calendar? What's the name of this calendar? How did we get this calendar? And why is it February 7th, 2023?
I'll let Kajzrimem start.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's always interesting to me because all of our lives is really centered around this thing that we call time. And I can't recall a time ever hearing anyone really ask the question, what exactly time is. And we're going to get into what time is, but so far we know that the calendar that we go by today, like you said, sister, it's pretty much how we organize ourselves. It's kind of like, in a way, what dictates our life. It's what dictates our movements. It dictates our habits. It dictates how we celebrate. It's really like a structure that
Mhm.
I had to like somewhat fit into. And interestingly enough, that same structure that we're fitting into happens to be a structure in which I would say is something adopted or enforced on majority of people in the world today.
Mm.
And I say that because if we're to understand what a calendar is, we have to understand that a calendar is also something very cultural,
Mhm.
meaning that the culture that you live by is also your umbrella. It's like everyone is under this cultural umbrella, right? So the calendar has to represent that culture.
That's right.
But when talking about the calendar, we have to also talk about the culture that calendar belongs to. So it's not really a secret that the world now is being dominated by European culture. So by that logic, we, live by the European calendar. So the calendar that we are going by now is Gregorian calendar. And it's a calendar that's really based on Roman politics and Roman culture.
That's right.
Because before it was the Gregorian calendar, it was the Julian calendar. And really, when we're talking about Gregorian, all we're really talking about is Pope Gregory. And before Pope Gregory was Pope Julian. But before the popes, it was just the Roman calendar. And if we even take it back a bit further, we can even talk about the Greek calendar, Hebrew calendar, whatever.
Mhm.
But all of these calendars are representing the culture. And for us to be under the Julian calendar, it says a lot. Because, or I'm sorry, Gregorian calendar, because again, the calendar is dictated by the culture. Meaning now our perception of time is also based on that culture. So in a way, when you mentioned the year 2023, we
Mhm.
have to take a look at that and say 2023 years of what?
Right. That's right.
So it becomes a question of what, right? So then when you realize that it's a cultural thing and time is based on the perception of the people within the culture, within the umbrella, then it becomes, that means I'm not living on according to time and culture. I'm not living according to actual nature. It becomes that I'm 2023 years of Roman culture. or of Roman rule. So that's really, to sum it up or to simplify it, that's what the Gregorian calendar is. It's Roman culture or Roman domination, which makes it really something that's not natural to not just Black people, but it's not natural to the world, because if you even look at it, they have to tell you that here right now it's what, 7:30, but in Japan it's what, maybe in the morning time. I'm not sure. Australia is another time, meaning
Right.
all based on your relation to time and space, depending on where you are and
That's
depending
right.
on your culture. So basically what this says is we don't really know or understand time and space, meaning we don't really know where we are if we're only being ruled by Roman culture and Roman perception. So to sum it up in a nutshell,
Mm.
that's what the Gregorian is. It's confusion. It's confusion of masses.
And with that, thank you. Tuesday Talk is over because he just explained it all. No. The explanation is a really good explanation, and I'm going to definitely pin some of these comments because it's really hitting the nail on the head. But I want to say one of the comments that you made was it's political, and you also said it's, and I paraphrase, it's not really centered around nature. Okay. And so it's centered around something that's artificial. This is, my contribution to the comment, and man-made, and European man-made for the whole world to have to participate in, And so let's take a look at time zones, which is what you were referring to when you said the time here and the time in Japan. I did a pre-med program in Illinois. Excuse me. I was born and raised in Hartford, Connecticut. We do Eastern Standard Time, right? You get your little extra hour in the fall or the winter time or whatever, then you lose it like in spring, right? When there's more sun. And so when I was in Illinois, I had a friend there who was from Indianapolis, and I was like, don't forget to change your clock because of daylight savings time. And she was like, oh, I don't do that. I'm from Indianapolis. And I'm like, what? Like, to me, like, what does that mean? Like, I had never met anybody who had never done that before. And she was like, they don't change the time back because they're not God and they can't change the time. And I was like, what? And it was the first time that I had spoken with someone who came from a subculture, the Midwest, right? Where it's not quite the Bible Belt, but it's like the Bible Belt without the Southern drawl, because it's like the Bible buttons, if you will, if we're going to use that analogy. And so it's like, that was what she was saying was from her perspective and the perspective from that part of the country. And, we talked about it, and she was saying, so like if you're doing business in Chicago, which is not far from where she lives, it causes problems because some people are an hour early or an hour late with the flights. And then Arizona doesn't do it. And I was like, this is a hot mess. And coming from Connecticut, everybody did it on the East Coast and then Connecticut, So to your point, not only is it political and cultural, but it's also subcultural, especially when you look at a country like the United States, which has different climates, different regions. I think 6 different time zones when you include Alaska and Hawaii. And Alaska and Hawaii are basically other countries. If we're going to keep it 100, it's not even a state; it's a country. If you've ever traveled to Hawaii, you go in and out of Hawaii almost like customs because of what you're bringing in and out. But that's another Tuesday Talk. So yes, so you can experience different cultures as it pertains to time with our relation to it within our own country. That's how political. And that's how cultural calendars and times are in this time. And around the year 2000, according to, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if the two of you know I'm wrong, or if in the chat, that the world was supposed to end according to the Aztec calendar in the year 2000. And all of these predictions when that came, and all the computers were going to blow up because they didn't know what they were going to do. And yeah, right. Y2K. And absolutely none of that had anything to do with anything that is natural. So thank you for that explanation. I'm really glad that you brought out those points. It's cultural, it's political, and it doesn't have anything to do with nature. So if it's 2023, let's just continue along with the Gregorian calendar. What's the year zero? What's that?
It's a
What's
really
zero?
good question. I saw that popping up in the comment. I mean, in the question section down there, and that's a really, really, really good question. I'm honestly like glad that people are asking that question because it really, tugs on the reality that we have working brains. Like as human beings, we're not animals, and we shouldn't function like animals.
Mm-hmm.
But that's technically what the political, the socio emotional agendas of the, you know, the people who put certain things in place, that's what they want you to do. They want you to function in that way where you don't think,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
where you say, okay, it's 2023, but you never really think about, okay, so if it's 2023 and I go all the way back 2023 years ago, was there nothing?
Right.
Why would it amount to zero at some point? Um, and then the other contradiction, in the mind comes in where they're saying that it's 2023, and somehow the time goes back to this point of zero, but then it goes further back, and then you say now you have this distinction of okay, AD, and BC. What are we really talking about? So if all of those other years count, then what's that middle point about? And
Right.
up until now, religion has pretty much dominated that space where there was saying that it was about the Messiah, the
Mm-hmm.
supposed Messiah, Jesus, and it again it really forces a lot of people into a place where they're not thinking. They're not being honest with themselves as a human being, as a something that lives on this earth that has a working brain, to kind of shut that part of your brain off and stop thinking about what's really going on around you. Uh, why would there be a year zero? Why would there be time at why would time stop at a certain point and why would you start counting again? So that explanation of it, that religious explanation of it, says within itself that it's about some sort of a domination
That's
of
right.
the human perception of what time period is important, right? We're in 2023. So if we're going based on that religious perspective, it's 2023 years of the Christian reign. It's
Right.
important. It's 2023 because this started at this point. We're saying that this person was born at this point, and it's all after that. Everything is important because of that person, and
That's right.
that's the pivotal person within our story. And then we make it all into history or his story. So
Right. That's right.
it's very important, that we do continue to ask questions like that. What is this? Why would there be a zero? Why would we start counting from a certain point? And if you do the proper research, that's what you'll come to. That's what we've all come to through doing the research and figuring it out. It's really just about a religious, socio-political reign.
That's
About
what it is.
yeah,
That's what it is. It's definitely a colonizer's calendar in the sense of this is your concept of time. We're going to take away your thousands and thousands of years of existence on the planet where there were calendars. We're going to take that away from you. We're going to take away your spiritual practice, and we're going to give you something based in fear, which causes you to be submissive and subjective to us. And we're going to tell you, you must do this or you go to hell. And everything that happened before is basically, if you look at the way math works, is in negative numbers. Then we get to zero. then the Messiah, Jesus Christ, is born. And you better believe him, because if you don't believe it's him, you're going to hell forever. Again, forever, another concept of time.
Right, right.
Okay, another concept of time. And you'll be in hellfire and brimstone, which is a place related to time. Okay, because hell is forever, right? So you have all this another relationship with time as it pertains to this Gregorian calendar. And then every month there's a holiday, right? Back in the day, it was Thanksgiving, Christmas. You had Three Kings Day if you lived in the Northeast, because there's a big Puerto Rican population in the Northeast, but you had to live in Hartford or New York City for that. If you lived in Virginia, you ain't had no Three Kings Day. And what else did you have? You had Valentine's Day, you had Mother's Day, Flag Day, 4th of July, and that's it. Oh, Columbus Day, right? Now you got Siblings Day, and you got Daughter's Day, and you got all these days. And basically what it is every month you're supposed to celebrate a holiday, a holy day. And if I'm celebrating something every month, it reroutes me and regrounds me into this calendar that I'm supposed to pretend, or I just blindly follow as the end all be all God ordained calendar on the planet. That's what that is, with a little bit of influence from Hallmark, I'm sure, because everybody's out here buying these calendars. It's pizza day, all that other stuff. So, there's this reiteration of this religion that, as far as Black and brown, as far as African people are concerned, for the most part, for the overwhelming majority of us, we got this as the result of colonization and or enslavement. If you are the descendant of an enslaved African in the Americas, especially here in the United States, you got it from both colonization and enslavement, which is what we got over here in the Americas. Okay. And so, right. This calendar is an erasure of our ancestry as African people and an implementation of the colonizer's history, period. That's what that is. Because even if you find someone who doesn't believe in Christianity, etc., if they are of the colonizer lineage, they benefit from this calendar because it is a part of a greater understanding of so-called white supremacy. These holidays reinforce that. I was in a group with someone, and we had these motivational meetings in the morning. They were non-religious motivational meetings, for lack of a better way to explain it. Now, they were all Christian. They were fundamentalists. I believe Jesus is my savior Christian, and I'm not going to stop you and whatever. I had my people knew where I stood. I made that clear. I said it once. I said it clearly, but that was it. So when we had, when everyone prayed, what I'm not going to do is bow my head and close my eyes so you can get the top of my head, so you can do whatever you want to do to the top of my head, and my hands are folded so I can't defend myself. That I'm not going to do. So I'm not doing that literally, and I'm not doing that figuratively, period. Right? So I would just sit and be quiet and be respectful. I made sure I didn't move. I gave them their space to pray. And I would see the leader of the group, and she had her head down, and she would open her eyes to peek to see what I was doing. So she was like this. She was like, and I'm just like, you look silly.
Terrible.
Just respect the fact that I'm not doing it, you know? And she was from the Spanish speaking islands. And I just found it interesting that that's what she was doing. During Christmas time, her son sent me a text message, happy holidays. I just say happy holidays back. Merry Christmas back. I'm not getting into it. But then he's texted, I hope you are celebrating the birth of our Lord Jesus Christ. So I replied back, because now you're playing and you're getting too close and you already know where I stand. So now you're going to get what you deserve. And I said, I don't believe that Christ myth. And I said myth. So now I'm ready. So if you want to come with that kind of energy, I'm going to give you the truth. So after that, he didn't say anything. And so this holiday is a way for people to reinforce de-Africanizing our choices to be who we are as African people, period. That's what they are. And you see it with subtle and not so subtle advancements and conscious and not so conscious evangelism. Like when people say Merry Christmas, especially out in the streets, they're just really giving you a well wishings and hope you're having fun and seeing your family and all that good stuff. That's what that means. And you know what I say back to them? Merry Christmas. Right on back to them. Because I don't want to break stride. If you're saying Merry Christmas to me, we ain't going to the same place. So I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. But that, so when people do that, that is, for the most part, just a knee-jerk response to their adherence to this Gregorian calendar, their adherence to the way this society is. But there's no, I don't think, any immediate and deliberate malice. But then you do have people who know that you are practicing a form of African spirituality and you've aligned with it, you've been initiated, and you ain't with it. And they use these holidays as a way to try to rope you back in and reel you back to Jesus. So these holidays are not without tools and use in terms of reinforcing white supremacy. That's what that is. And over these past few years, I realized it when folks just been getting on my nerves. Like, I don't do that. Why are you saying this to me? Like the people who know. You must want all the smoke that you're asking for.
That's a really interesting thing about, colonization, and it sucks that we have to talk about it so much, but
I know,
there's a element of it that just colonization itself is so pervasive. The concept of it, the idea that changing someone's mind changes their way of life, and if it changes their way of life, it changes their descendants' way of life, and on and on and on and on, so on and so on and so on. So but the interesting thing that our teachers have taught us about colonization is that, even outside of the more brutal side of it, we talk about slavery, when we talk about, wars and things like that. There's a very brutal side of it, but the one that we have to be very conscious of is the more subtle and the mental side of it. Because like you were saying, those people who you were just speaking about, it's probably not that those people necessarily are the direct descendants of the people who created or wrote the books of Christianity, the people who built the churches, the people who decided what the holidays were going to be. They're not the direct descendants of those people, but because they've come in contact with that form of colonization or that form of some sort of a mind changing, they've been affected in that way where they now feel the need to go out and get the next person to follow the same thing. And when it does come to time and space, it is really important that we stay vigilant to, make sure that we're not falling into those traps. Because again, if we're thinking people, then you have to just say to yourself, okay, well, when did, Christmas start? What was the real origins of Christmas? Okay, so if that's where it started, then what was before that?
That's right.
What was December? What was, okay, just to get into some of the more like small things. December, right? We know that DEC or DEC or DEC is 10.
Right.
What month of the Gregorian calendar is December? Right, it's the 12th month.
Right.
So December 25th. When did that become that? You started celebrating this specific thing on that day, and then on top of that, when did that day even become? If you really start to pay attention, if you really start thinking about what these things are, it's December. What does this name mean? Why is it the 12th month and not the 10th month? Was it ever the 10th month? Okay, when it was the 10th month, what was December 25th? And was that day that's supposed to be on the 12th month, on the 25th day, was that Christmas? But those are the things that nobody who's on the supposed winning side of colonization wants you to think. They don't want you to do that research for yourself. It's just about it's supposed to be the way that it is, and you don't stray away from that. So it's important that we continue to talk about these things.
Yeah, that's a good. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Not to cut you off, sister, but I kind of want to touch on something you mentioned. You mentioned the subtle things, the small things, the things we don't even realize is like a part of the issues, or how we are participating in the kind of colonial psychosis that we've seemed to find ourselves living under. And I also want to tie it back into this concept of like the zero. We're talking about really how the calendar that we're going by is like a political tool, right? And it's not just political, it's cultural. And that culture being Christian, because if you really know and you really pay attention, America's a Christian nation. So of course it's going to go by a Christian calendar. Now, this whole concept of zero, you even mentioned I think Y2K, how the concept of something coming to an end. Even when the Romans established their calendar, they established it from year one, meaning the idea of zero is really something that we have to really think about, because it's really also something that's coming from the colonial kind of mindset. Because we have to start to think, why is it that people were telling us that the Mayans had an end for their calendar? Were people predicting that the world was going to end? Did they predict that their civilization was going to end? What is it? Why did the year stop at zero? And then it's another thing you have to think about is we're trying to insert the year 2020 and 2012 into an indigenous society like the Mayan calendar, right? But were the Mayans somehow Christians? Did they have a Christian calendar for us to insert those kind of timelines into their thinking process? So right then and there, it should be like red flags. So why is it that we even found ourselves entertaining those kinds of ideas? And we have to think, because we've just been educated in a way that is colonial. And the idea of zero is a strictly colonial mindset. My brother Kenibashu was saying, once they established year one in the Gregorian calendar, everything beyond that or before that becomes zero. But zero comes with a concept of nothingness. But when you say something is nothing or there is nothing, the word is itself represents being.
That's
like
right.
To say is, it's being. So to say this is zero or something is zero, which is supposed to represent nothing, in itself is an oxymoron. It doesn't really make sense. So that must mean that there is no such thing as nothing. So that also means that there's no such thing as zero. And it's very interesting because from an indigenous perspective, we don't really see history like the way we're taught to count it, like year 1, 2, 3. We do count, but the idea of a beginning and an end is strictly a colonial concept. Already from the jump, it's starting about the end of indigenous civilization and indigenous societies in the beginning of a new one, a Christian one. So that's why you would even see in our calendar, you would see right now we're in the year 422. I'm sure, as you mentioned, we've been on this planet a lot longer than that. So now we have to question, why is this calendar only 422? Which we also now question, why was the Mayan calendar ending? And was it really ending? So who was giving us that impression and that idea?
That's right.
Small, subtle things that we have to really see. Okay, these are like mental psychosis or mental spells we've been put under to see history and to see time in a perspective or a way that is completely political, that is outside of the reality of nature itself. Because when we're talking about time, time itself doesn't really exist. Like, you can't really tangibly say something is time, or that there's a thing called time. What time really is really our perception of the cycles and the rhythms of nature.
That's right.
So these rhythms and these cycles have a movement, and that movement is what we can observe as time. So to talk about time and a calendar and timekeeping, we have to keep in mind that it's only an observation from the human observing his or her divine reality. So there can't be a zero. I just wanted to, mention that because I noticed someone asked that question of like a year zero. There wouldn't be a year zero. That's, again, a colonial and political concept, because they want you to destroy in your mind what was before this.
That's a really good explanation. And I'm the one who posted, like, is there a year zero? Then what's the year zero? The year zero was supposed to be supposedly when Jesus Christ was born. And so just like what was just said, if you are focused on these numbers, if you're focused on zero and that this is the year 2023, it's always centered around a cultural, political, and Christian reinforcement of what happened here. It's like saying, hey, come look over here. There's nothing to see over there. Come over here, meet Jesus. And then to absolutely forget about everything that happened at this supposed pre-zero date, and so I just wanted to comment on that absolutely, that is absolutely what zero is and what zero is not. Also, I'm re-studying my Spanish. Is a state of being. There in Spanish, there's a nuance of two different to be's, estar and ser. One is temporary, one is permanent, just to be general with it. But to say something is something, to reiterate your point, means that you are a state of being in some form. So there is really nothing, right? There can't be nothing if I'm going to say is, because is a state of being. So zero is something. Focus on when Jesus was born. That's what zero is. And if there's any number that could be in your top 3 of important numbers, it's zero, because zero is, people inherently think of it as a reset. Okay, so what are we getting ready to do? If zero's right here, what are we getting ready to do? And if zero's right here, I am looking that way at zero, right? That means everything back here is not important. Well, you know what? Black people, everything before zero was us. Everything before zero was the beginning of humanity, and that was us. And that's why there's this look over here, right after zero. And another really good point you brought up, or that was in one of the comments, in terms of something being linear and being straight. And that's just not how we work. We work in cycles. Our calendars were based upon the sun's movement, and the cycle of the sun, and the cycle of the stars, and the moon, and the lunar system. There's no line. That's not how we think. We think in cycles. So I think that was a really good segue for us to jump into the sidereal calendar. I see some questions about Rep and Pet. I'm gonna post those when we get to it. There's another question or comment about the sidereal calendar being Kemetic. When we get there, I'm gonna post that question as well. So, brothers, can we jump into the sidereal calendar? Do either of you have one handy, that so we can see how beautiful they are?
I have one right here.
Oh, perfect. Can you move it closer to the screen just so we can see?
Can you see it well from here?
We can see it. We can see it. Can we see one of the pages?
Okay. Let me bring you to this month.
So somebody who's seen one of these beautiful sidereal calendars created by the Earth Center, or if any of you know what is the original organization of what in a Gregorian calendar you would call a week. What is that called? If you know what it is, put it in the chat. Somebody said that once they started using the sidereal calendar, they continued using it and they never stopped. So what is it called? What is the organizational function of each chunk called? What's the, I don't want to say week, but what was the week before it was used in the Gregorian calendar? Can somebody, yes, somebody can somebody else put it in there? Someone from the Shrine of Ma'at better answer this question. Because I know y'all supposed to know this one. Uh-oh, Jason Holmes coming with it. I see Medharu. I see Deccan twice. I see Deccan spelled with a C, and I see Deccan spelled with a K. Which one is correct? Or are they both correct? Or are they both wrong? They're both correct because we are just replicating sounds and not necessarily how it's spelled completely. So can you explain to us what is a Deccan? What is the sidereal calendar? And let's jump into all the love and the joy and just the dopeness that is African. What's the sidereal calendar?
Okay, so basically through our ancestors' investigations of nature,
That's right.
at some point they observed that, okay, there's all of these days passing. So the days pass and they go and they go and they go and they're looking at the stars, they're looking at the sun, they're looking at the moon, they're trying to find a cycle, trying to find some sort of thing to help them to orient themselves in space and time. And I think that it's important that we start there, because what is the purpose of even really doing that? What's the purpose of really looking to something divine to try to fit into it, right? It's about survival. And that's what our ancestors were really predicating all of their investigations and findings on. How do we make it so that we can survive within this environment that we're born in, that we're made for, that we're subjected to? So what are the cycles? What are the rhythms that are happening?
Right. The rhythms
that give us a space to fit within this larger existence that we're a part of from our perspective here on Earth, right? So just to go directly to your question, the Decan or the Meteru is what we know as a 10-day period. So on the calendar, because the Gregorian calendar, the Julian calendar, the Roman calendar, they're all copies of this calendar. So in the sidereal calendar, there are 13 months. 12 of those months are 30 days long. And then the 13th month is 5 days long.
Right.
So you do the math, that gives you 365 days. So in those 12 months of 30 days, there are 3 decans or 3 meteru. Meteru is the Medu term for a 10-day period. So 10 days. Met is 10, and Heru is the day. So Meteru is a 10-day period. Now, the reason why that becomes important is because in that investigation, through those searches and those researches for the cycles, for the rhythms that our ancestors were looking for to be able to survive as spiritual beings within this physical existence, they found that and you can see this on the calendar. I'll just show you. So the first day of the Decan Uh, this is a day where, you know, it's kind of open for spiritual activities, normal, you know, everyday activities. It's what you could say is just a normal day, right? The first 3 days are basically that way. And then on the fourth day of the Deccan is a day of rest. So, what the day of rest is really about is taking a day to purify and cleanse any space that you want to welcome the divine so that you can have an interaction with
Mhm.
the non-material, because we understand that, like, okay, you could say, and this goes back to the zero concept, right? You could say that the air in this room is empty space, but is it really empty space? If I can breathe this air,
Mhm.
it does something for my lungs, which does something for the rest of my body,
That's right.
does something for my blood. How can we really say that it's empty? Because it has to have some sort of a sustenance to it to be able to feed my body,
That's right.
right? So
Right.
the invisible, what we don't see, what we can't perceive with our eyes, there's something there, right? And there's these interactions that maybe some people may not be able to explain, but our ancestors had an understanding of that and saw that on that fourth day, it was the most favorable to cleanse and purify those holy spaces, so that those divine beings can see that as a pure space, because they're divine, they're pure, they're not like
Mhm.
us, they don't have the corruptions that human beings have. So, you know, they don't go to the bathroom the way that we do. You know, you go have some Taco Bell, and you know, it's not pretty. You know what I mean? So um, it's natural to us human beings. It's a part of the way that we have to live. We have to eat, and we have to go through that process. You know, the divine is different for them. So making sure that that space is pure and clean, that's what the fourth day of calendar is about. And then on the fifth day, and you can see here, you have ancestral holy day, right? So the ancestors become a very important part of the Kemetic paradigm, because in that invisible, right, before you there was someone, and before them there was someone, and before them, and before them, and before them, and before them. So technically, all of that projection into the past, you're connected to it, and it plays a pivotal part in your life, because you didn't just come from nowhere.
Right.
It's not like the gods just fixed you up, gave you a parachute, and dropped you from the sky and was like, "Hey, make space for this guy." Right? Our path to the divine is through those ancestors, because even, you know, no matter how powerful your God is, no matter who you subscribe to be your God, they still had to go through your parents. They still had to go through your mother and your father to
Right.
get you here. So how could we be so arrogant to think that we can reach the divine through just, hey, I'm here. Can you hear me? This is what I want. This is what I'm looking for. Give it to me. It doesn't really follow the same logic that we see the divine following. So on that fifth day, our ancestors saw that there was a, you could say that there's a portal that opens that makes the communications very favorable for our ancestors. And on that day, you know, we give offering, we make sure that we honor their names, we speak their names, and we give offering to make sure that our connection with our ancestors is taken care of. Then the next 3 days are, again, what you could say are normal days, regular spiritual activities, meditations, things like that. And then um, there's the Divine Holy Day. Now, Divine Holy Day is the day that, now that you've fed that connection to your ancestors, which is your path to the divine, they've been doing the work. And this checks and balances every 10 days to make sure that, these things are kept up with. The ancestors are taking what you said, taking your speech to the divine.
Mm-hmm.
Let them know, like, this is what my lineage is doing. This is what's going on. So now the divine have been met with those wishes, been met with those speeches, and now you do what we call the Zimzim to honor the divine, or a meditation that honors the divine. And then the next day, there is another day of rest where, again, you clean and purify the space to just ensure that whatever divine energies want to be there, whatever divine energies are recognizing all of those efforts that you're putting in on a spiritual, physical, and energetic line, all of those things are honored. So that's the Khan, or the Metaru explained.
So thank you for that explanation day by day. And when you see one of these calendars, it explains, it lets you know what each day is for. And there's a beautiful picture, just visually, it is so beautiful. It's something that you definitely want to have. This is like the merging of the education and the conceptual with the practical. Like, this calendar has both. Here's what's going on, which is the education, and here's what you do, which is the practice and the application. If some of you are looking for a place to start, this calendar is really a good, practical, logical, accurate, spiritual, and functional place to start. All those things all at once. You just by getting this calendar, because it guides you in what you're supposed to do on a daily basis. Okay. And it's beautiful to look at. We have a lot of questions in the chat about when is the first, what is the real New Year, which is Weprin-Pet. What is Weprin-Pet? How does the Earth Center pronounce that? That's how we pronounce it at the Shrine of Ma'at. Is it September 11th? What is it based on? The sun, the moon? Is it based on the three different seasons? Can we just talk a little bit about the new year, and where would that new year fall? Where does our true blue new year fall in reference to the Gregorian calendar?
Yeah. So I just want to first off start off by saying that this calendar is really something special, and I can't emphasize enough that this calendar is a calendar that's based on nature and the natural rhythms and the natural cycles that our ancestors could observe. And I want to say that because really this calendar is not even something we create. I mean, we publish it and we design it, but this calendar is something that's been passed down for generations and generations and generations.
Mm-hmm.
And with that being said, in terms of the new year, the Renpit, our ancestors first noticed that the Nile River, which really is the happy river, because to say Nile is just saying river. The word Nile itself means river in Latin. So it's kind of weird saying the river.
Right. Or the Nile.
Yeah. So they noticed that this river was very special because it flowed from the south into the Mediterranean Sea. And they noticed that at certain points in time that this river would have a flooding.
That's right.
So what our ancestors did to observe this was actually they started to pay attention to the stars, and particularly the Sirius star in relation to the sun. So what we know as 365 days is a rhythm. Now, if you notice in the sidereal calendar, there's 4 sections here. So this is year 422. So that would be the second section of a 4-year period. So that means at year 423, that will be the 3rd section. And at year 424, that will be the 4th section. And it's divided this way because 365 days is one rhythm. And then there's another 365 days and another 365 days. And then finally a 366 day. And the reason for that is because in observing the Nile and observing the movements of Sirius in relation to the sun, our ancestors noticed that there's something called a declination. So on the first section, the sun would be here and the Sirius would be here. The next year it would be here. The next year it would be here. But on the 4th year, it would come into an alignment. But you would have to wait an extra day for it to be a perfect alignment. That's why on the 4th year, it gives a 366 day, which is where the modern system gets the leap year from. Now, during the 4th year is when the Nile would have its annual flood, or it would flood every year, but the really big flood would happen on the perfect alignment. So that's what we call the real year. So 4 years in relation to the Gregorian 365 day year is what we know as the real year, which is really 1461 days. So 365 days is what we would call the farmer's year, or the year that we would go by for farming. That's like the seasonal year. So that's how the cycles kind of function, or the rhythm leading up into a cycle. And that's really where we get the notion of the new year from. The alignment of the Sirius and the together. And then after that, then it goes back again like this until the 4th year again, and it comes back into alignment. That's when we recognize the new year starting. And this happens during what we would know as September, usually September 10th or September 11th.
I hope you guys got that. I love it when people tell the story of the inundation of the Hapi. It's one of my favorite stories, because why is that so important, and how does this tie into the calendar? Because when there are floods, the way that we hear it in Western news, the flood came and washed everything out and destroyed homes. It's disaster. It's this and the third, right? And why is that? Because they can't control the flood and they can't dominate the flood. And so therefore it's a disaster. But what did our ancestors do? We prepared for it. We said, this is the inundation. And then from that, life came from that. That's how we looked at it. And why is that? Because we were in tune to nature and we were in the rhythm of what nature was doing. And from that, we're able to, since we were on the planet the first and for a substantial amount of time, you're able to see the cycles of the sun, see the cycles of the stars. And this information is passed down from generation to generation for thousands of years. This is a general answer to one of the questions of, how are we able to get these calendars? Because we were on this planet long enough to observe cycles, to be in rhythm, just like we in rhythm on the dance floor. That rhythm doesn't just start and stop when we're dancing or playing basketball. That rhythm is within us. That rhythm is within us. And I'm not trying to clown or be disrespectful, but when you see other people not feel the bass and the beat of the drum, how do you not feel this rhythm? Not being able to feel and experience that rhythm also does not start and stop on a dance floor or an athletic field. Okay? So if you have that rhythm within you, you are able to connect to all the other rhythms, and the major rhythm is the rhythm of nature. And that's why our ancestors were able to take a flood and make it work for us and work within it. Okay. So someone said or asked the question, if we're not doing time, then why do we have this calendar? And I'm not looking exactly at the question, but that's basically what it is. We are recognizing time. We're just recognizing natural time. We're not creating time, like time zones. We're not and Eastern Standard Time and all this other stuff. We're not creating time. We're not creating days. We're not creating cycles. We're observing them. We observe them. We're in tune with them. We recognize them. We recognize that that's a part of the divine, and we are recording them, okay, as Sashat and Tahuti do. And we're passing this information along. And over time, we've been able to say, okay, this is the pattern that we see of the sun, that we see of the stars, that we see of the moon, that we see of this flood. And we're going to write down what we have seen for thousands and thousands of years. That's what we do. That's what that is. So we're respecting time as a component of like a visual way to see the divine in action through these cycles and through these rhythms. You know, you can't see time. You can't capture time. Like, you know what? I saw time walking down the street down Adam Clayton Powell. You're not going to see time do that. You know what else you're not going to see walking down the street? Numbers. I saw number 1, 2, 3 walking down the street. No, you didn't. Because you're not going to see numbers walking down the street. You're not going to see time walking down the street, but we understand quantity and we understand rhythm. So we respect time. That's what that is. And the calendar is just a physical manifestation. However, the calendar is written, it's published with paper for our purposes, but our ancestors, and also like ancient other people who are ancient, not as ancient as us, but other people who have ancient also had calendars that they wrote down because they were also in tune with nature. So I hope I answered, that question in terms of our respect for time and the calendars and where those calendars came from. It's a rhythm, baby. And we just recognize it and go with the rhythm. It didn't just start with James Brown. Okay. It didn't start there. That's another manifestation of how we recognize rhythm. I'm so glad you brought rhythm into it. I don't think I've ever connected rhythm with the calendar. And when you said rhythm, I'm like, he's dropping gems. I'm going to use rhythm when I talk about calendars now, because that's also recognizing a cycle is recognizing a rhythm. When you listen to an 8 beat, that's a cycle because it restarts, after that. Thank you for that, that explanation. I want you guys, let me just do a little sponsorship here. Please donate and support the Earth Center. I have highlighted that particular comment. It's Cash App at the ECNJ. E as in Earth, C as in Center, N as in New Jersey, NJ as in New Jersey. The Earth Center. I'm sorry. The ECNJ. It's pinned up to the comments right there. We have to support all of our Kemetic centers that are rooted in the facts and rooted in the history. Okay, so can one of you speak to Repwen Pet? When does our new year begin? And should we be looking at it as just one new year? I think we all, when I was a little kid, I was like, this don't feel like the new year. Everything is still dead and cold. I mean, I grew up in Connecticut back in the day before global warming was what it is, whether it's man-made or not. And just December 31st and January 1st were both cold and snowy and icy. How is this new? I used to think that as a kid, but we still had the concept of one day, this day, no matter what's happening, is the new year. So can you speak to Weapon Pet and what that means in terms of a new year?
So just to take it from where you were with cycles and rhythms, right? So the again, the investigation of nature is so important in our striving to really survive within this existence. So those great ancestors who were making those observations, doing those searches and those researches, looking into the stars, trying to figure out, what are these rhythms, or just really trying to figure out where's there some stability
Mm-hmm.
in these things that we can see around us, that we can place ourselves in to find a stability, something for us to stand on, something for us to base our lives on.
That's right.
So you can go and you can do the same research. Um, the most obvious rhythm that we can see when we look up or we look out into the cosmos is the sun, right? And
That's
I think it's important to talk about the difference between rhythms and cycles because if we look at the sun, we know for a fact that it doesn't rise at the same exact time every day.
mm-hmm.
So some days it's 6:32. Some days it's 6:25. Some days it, and then we have the whole daylight savings thing where you get into all of that and then it's completely off. So the reality is that the sun, just the same way that the earth is moving and we're rotating and moving through the cosmos, the sun is doing the same thing somewhere. So it has its the rotation of the earth is not constant. So we can't necessarily depend on the sunrise and the sunset to say that this is a stable enough cycle. It's not a cycle because it doesn't start and end at the same exact point every day.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We can't say that that's stable enough for us to base our concept of time on. So what's next? Right? We have the moon. The moon has its cycle, its rhythm, right? You know, it rises, it sets, it has the uh, waxing, waning, half moon, all of those things, but none of them are, you know, stable, not stable enough for us as a human being to base our lives on. Right? So they just continue and they continue. They look to the stars. They found out ways to track the stars. Uh, they found out ways to observe the stars in different ways where they didn't need telescopes and things like that. And in all of those researches, they ended up finding the Sirius star. So the Sirius star is the one star that was tracked over lifetimes and lifetimes to finally find out that the Sirius star has a cycle that it goes through over so many years, and
Mm-hmm.
then it comes exactly back to the same place in the sky, and you can track it. So the reason why just to give a little tidbit, the reason why the calendar is called sidereal, right? The word sidereal or sidereal positioning is something that involves a third party, right? So there's the Earth, and from that position on the Earth, there's the Moon, the Sun, and then the Sirius star.
Mm.
So over so many millennia, record keeping, tracking things, the Sirius star has a cycle of 1,000. This the smaller cycle, right? The one that we base our year on. A regular year is 1,461 days. Now, within that 1,461 days, we have 4 seasonal years, right? The 365 days that we know as a year. But this is just something that, like we've said before, I think someone said it earlier in the talk, that this is just something that a farmer would base his profession on. because there's a time for planting, you know, based on the weather, based on things that are happening, rainy seasons, dry seasons, things like that, cycles of the moon that will affect, you know, your crops. So that's what we know as a farmer's year. And it's a very small cycle. Now, getting into the I don't want to go into the leap year. I'll let my brother Kajzrimem get into that. But yeah, just to kind of make that distinction about the difference between rhythms and cycles and what it really offers us, why we were looking for something that's really a cycle, but we got that understanding through observing so many rhythms within nature.
Right. That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. To if I'm thinking I'm understanding and I'm answering the question correctly, it really goes back to what I was explaining with the cycle of the rhythm of the Nile. But what I didn't mention was the fact that the Nile, everything on the planet kind of functions in what we would call like the ecosystem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things that everything kind of like energetically is bouncing off of each other. So there's dialogues, so to speak, happening.
That's right.
Now, we can clearly see by observing that if I put a seed into the ground and I water that seed, and then sunlight from the top coming down hits that seed, things grow.
That's right. I love it.
So our ancestors noticed this, and that what that means is that clearly there's another dialogue happening that's bigger than the dialogue that we can observe around ourselves.
That's right.
So there's a cosmic dialogue happening.
That's right.
So within this cosmic dialogue, we're receiving energy or information from other celestial bodies. Now, what makes the new year, because I saw someone asking in the comments like what would be considered the real new year. What makes it a new year is the fact that we're tracking and we're following the Sirius star's rhythm. And the reason for doing so is simply because we're trying to survive. Putting the seed into the ground and watching it grow and flourish is for only one reason. It's to eat.
Mm.
How to manage myself when the Nile is flooding is for one reason. Not well, two reasons: to eat and to know how to, maneuver when it
That's
happens.
right.
But it
Mm-hmm.
really all comes back to one thing: survival. So if the planet that I'm on affects me, but the planet itself is affected by things outside of it, that means I have to now understand how I can also not just be in good harmony with just the planet itself, but also in harmony with the things outside of the planet. So the reasoning for the new year is because we had to follow the rhythm of the Sirius, because the Sirius in a way is 10 times more hotter and dense than our sun, meaning whatever energy is projected from the Sirius star is more powerful than what's projected from our regular sun. So in a way, that rhythm that we're tracking is to let us know when the Sirius star's energy is at its highest in relation to us.
Mm-hmm.
So at that period of the cycle leading into the rhythm, of the rhythm leading into the cycle, we know when the new year is. And I think I did mention it before. That period is usually around September, what the modern system would call September 11th.
Mm-hmm.
Not because of the day itself, but because of that is the period our ancestors realized when the energies of the Sirius star was at its highest.
Mm.
So that's what we would consider to be the real year, or the new year, or the beginning of a new year. Which really, when we're saying that, what we're really saying is it's just the stars and the cosmos moving back into a certain alignment from which they started from. Because to talk about a rhythm, we have to talk about movement.
That's right.
Rhythm is even what allows us to even consider ourselves to be existing in a certain space. And what I mean by that is everything is in movement, right? There's a motion to everything. The earth, the moon, the sun, Sirius, they're
Mhm.
all in motion. They're in a movement. And in tracking that is how we come up with the concept of time. And to maybe kind of give a little bit of deeper understanding of how, what I'm going to say is this: science, as we know it, can kind of give us the perception that it's something that is exact. Science, as we know it, gives us this notion of correctness. So when you look at it, they would tell you that a day of one full day is maybe like what, 23 hours and 0.75.869, and then a whole trail of point numbers, right? So they're telling you that the day is not exactly 24 hours.
Right.
Then they're giving you a precise estimate of that day. So it's like we don't know we don't have precision because it's not precise, but we can give you the precise of how it's not precise. Already, that's kind of like a mental, you know, mind, retardation. So our ancestors didn't look at it like that. Our ancestors didn't look at it from how we would look at it from like a scientific or mathematical kind of perspective. So we have to follow rhythm. So our ancestors noticed that throughout the period of what we call a day, the earth and the sun come into contact with certain groups of stars. And these groups of stars we can count are 24 of them throughout the period of a day. And that is the concept of how we can get, the 24-hour of a day rhythm. And from there, you can get, okay, 24 hours. That's one day, because 24 stars that we come into contact with throughout the cycle of the sun going from sun up to sundown. Then from there, you get the week, because now we're observing, okay, within a period of 10 days, we see these celestial bodies are in these positions, and it's constant. Okay. And then from months, we go from years. So it's really just about tracking the rhythm and the movement.
The rhythm.
That's why we say that time itself doesn't exist. It's just us fitting into a reality. So for us, the new year is just us fitting into a reality. And that reality just so happens to happen within the time frame of a specific rhythm, which happens to fall in what we would call, in this modern sense, September 11th or sometimes September 10th. I hope that made sense.
I was just getting ready to say, I hope that made sense. And I'm gonna say this too. Whenever it was time to go back to school, it felt like a new year. I'm saying it, I'm talking about how I felt as a kid. The new year, January 1st, did not feel new. But when we went back to school, which back in the day was like the day after Labor Day or something like that, which is the beginning of September, it felt new. It just felt new. So, later, years later, or closer to being in this present age, learning about the calendar and Weapon Pet and stuff, I'm like, okay, well, that made sense. That affirmed how I felt, as a kid growing up, especially growing up in the Northeast, where ain't nothing new on January 1st. Everything is dead and buried, or I shouldn't say dead. It's dormant. It's also in its own cycle. Even in Connecticut, snowy Connecticut, with snow and ice and sleet and sub-zero temperatures, that's still a part of that cycle. I hope that people really understand what was just explained. I'm going to read some of the questions, see if we can. Some of these questions were already answered. And because a lot of people asked a bunch of questions before it even started. I don't know if you guys saw that. I do have Haru Asar Ankh Amun Ra said, the Gregorian calendar got us off rhythm. Well, look who wrote the Gregorian calendar. Do they have rhythm? Do we see that rhythm in dance and in athletic sport? Why am I going back to that? Because that is the simplest, easiest, most perfunctory way to see if somebody has rhythm or not. How are you running with a ball, dunking it, passing it, and can you dance? And on a sidebar, I gave a shout out to the Lakers earlier. A friend of mine not too long ago sent me this highlight reel of Magic Johnson. If there is, I mean, he was a 6'9" point guard, and he had no look pass rhythm, where you had 9 other grown mini giants running down the court, and there's a certain rhythm to which you have to give a bounce pass where you're looking in the opposite direction for it to land precise and exact so that it bounces up into the hand of someone who's then going to lay it up or dunk it up. That's rhythm. That's a physical manifestation of what we see and what he explained in the as Sepet with its repeatability. Because before you were saying, or I forget which one, I'm sorry, I'm just really listening, not keeping track of who's saying it, where you have the sun rising and setting at different times. So we can't say the sun rises at 6:30 every day. You can't say that. The sun rises around the same time, kind of during the same season in a certain part of the country. Those are all rough estimates, right? But then we get the explanation of Sepet, and that rhythm is spot on. That from that we were able to create a way to keep track of time, which doesn't really exist. This is deep, people. Yeah, Ayadela just said these brothers are deep. All right, I'm about to put this up just for some giggles, and I'm going to read some of these questions. Someone asked if you guys were out of calendars, and then someone else answered, no, we still have calendars. Just to make sure, you do have calendars for the Gregorian year 2023?
2023, yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Can we put in the chat how we can purchase these calendars?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Wait,
it'll be
that's not
posted there.
All right, let me see. Sidereal root word is star. All right, Curtis Jackson. Curtis talking about odd. He's from the Shrine of my odd. Just wanted to say what's up. Okay, I'm going through all these questions. Yeah, so someone said before is 1,461 days, 1 year, but it's 4 years, and that includes what we would say is a leap year. So what was said was the cycle of Sepet is every 4 years, which on the Gregorian calendar, that 4th year is that leap year. So they don't make the connection of 4 years. It's just, here's the year, here's the year, here's the year. Oh, every 4th year you add a day. And so there's no reason behind it. I mean, yes, they say because you have a quarter day for 3 years, then on that 4th year, that completes that quarter. I mean, that completes that one. And then therefore you have that extra day, but it doesn't connect it into anything solar or lunar or cyclical or rhythmic, and they most certainly don't say Sirius or Sepet. They don't say that.
So that's just mathematics and science. You know, it's all political. It's just to give the illusion that they know exactly what they're talking about, because they themselves don't really know where the calendar itself comes from, so they can't fully explain it.
That's
so they
right.
have to give a more intellectual sounding answer that's making it more complicated than it really is.
Yeah. There's one question that just came in, and it was it's kind of pointing at something that I thought was very important to talk about on this topic too. Someone asked, as an individual, what's the best energy to have, or the best things to do during the new year when the Sirius star has its highest and most influential energy? So, like, overarching, this is a really good question, because it starts to, you know, beg for the understanding of, okay, if the fifth day is about our ancestors, and then a few days later we're talking about the divine, right? We're trying to fit into something that's larger. We're honoring what's come before us, right? Because we understand that we're a part of this earth, and this earth feeds us energies.
That's right.
Those energies that we're fed, someday, someone will come after us, and they'll have to have an understanding that we were a part of what laid the foundation for them. And then going further and further back, there's something that's above all of us that is dictating, and imposing on all of us, which is that nature, the nater, the divine. So uh, to give a general overview of this question, really, um, we as initiates, we have the understanding that this is not about having something that's necessarily just for show. This is really like a practical, this is about our lives. This is a really important part of life as a human being when you really start to understand the importance of these energies, of honoring the ancestors and
That's right.
honoring the divine. Because when you're talking about time, right, there's periods, there's ages, different days present different things. Uh, Different months may present different energies. Like my brother Kajzrimem was saying, if there's stars in the sky that hold some form of an energy, when those stars pass through the zenith and the sun is intersecting with those energies, and those energies are meeting us here on earth, what is the effect that it has on us? What does that energy do to us? What does it do for us? Because we can obviously see, like he said, if we plant that seed in the ground, there's something down there, there's something in there that's giving that seed life, and then it sprouts up out to become whatever it will be. So
Mhm.
being in line and really having an understanding of all of those energies is something that's very, 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 very important within Kemetic culture, because we're honoring our ancestors. So in a sense, we have to take their guidance, right? And that's a very important part of answering this question. So uh, when we do go and get ancestral guidance, right, from temples, that really lets us know what to look out for within a certain period. Um, in the what we call the divination for this period, there were very specific things that uh, the ancestors were presenting that would line up with very specific happenings in time and space, like that we could see in the physical, that we were warned about just before. There's a way that the proverbs are speaking. There's, a way that the language comes to us, but it's up to us as individuals to carry that throughout the year, throughout the period, throughout the 4-year period, um, to be able to walk
Mhm.
with some dignity, some honor. And that's really how we learn to honor our ancestors, because that guidance is so important. You know, I'm just one human being. I'm so small within all of this existence.
Right.
When it does come down to it, there's so many things outside that are imposing on me. So having those non-material manifestations be able to assist us in the way that we walk every day in our individual lives, is very important. So with that kind of set there, when the Sirius star does go through that cycle and the new year does come, so every 365 days, right, there's a last day, right? And on that last day, uh, And even on that next first day, you could say you are looking for, again, guidance and a very specific, you know, guidance to do the things that our ancestors need to be done, and really helping you to walk in a way that, again, brings that honor and dignity to their names. Um, but it's just as I walk into this new period, what what do I need? You know, what's going to be coming to me? And a lot of this can be covered in a service that our sister corporation, Costa Natural Healing. If somebody could, I know there's some Earth Center people that are on him. If somebody could just drop the website in the comments. Costa Natural Healing has Earth energy readings. So in those Earth energy readings, we have a priest that you sit down with. Sometimes it's over the phone. If you have the privilege of meeting up with a priest in person, sometimes we can do them in person as well. But what they do is they read the energies of the earth, the way that your energies are speaking, and they decipher the messages that the earth is sending. And then from there, you have some understanding of what's going on in your life, why certain things are happening. It's another sense of that non-material guidance that helps us to know what these periods are really bringing forth. So I would say, I would encourage people to do their research and find out more about that on the website on Costa, for Costa. And yeah, it's really important to understand that, it's not necessarily about what we want individually, but what brings honor and dignity to this work.
So we have a question, and I think you might have answered this question. As an individual, what's the best energy to have, or the best things to do during the new year when Sepet, or the Sirius star, has the highest and most influential energy? You did just say that there's certain things that are specific that we're supposed to do for the ancestors. I'm not sure if that kind of answers this question, but can you touch on this if there needs to be a little bit more said about it?
Yeah, just chime in on what my brother is talking about. It's a good question because the question actually opens up the doorway for an even deeper conversation, in which I'm sure Kenibashu tried to touch on. And we in the modern society have been kind of raised to view ourselves as just individuals. But when you look throughout humanity and the history of human beings, there has never been an individual. What I mean by that is there's always been a sense of community.
Mm-hmm.
There's always been a sense of like this village kind of lifestyle. Even for a human being to become, you have to have two people coming into a communal kind of union. So the question isn't really about what you need to do really as an individuals or individuals separate from each other. It should be, what do I, the individual who is an individual piece of something that is much larger, need to do in order to fit into the harmony of the existence? And this could be different for many of us because in the modern society, we're raised to be individuals, but at the same time, not really realizing that we're all moving kind of like in this loop created by the system.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like an illusion of individualism.
Mm-hmm.
That illusion of individualism, we kind of lose the sense of community, but yet still being in some form of community. It's an interesting thing to observe when you notice it. But the question, if I can try to answer it with a little bit more clarity, should be, how can I fit into the existence, because it's all about the survival of the human being. And we all come as spirits, but spirits coming from what we know as like a river, meaning that we're all droplets of water in a much larger pool. So how you fit, or the energies that you need to come into the new year, is going to be really directed towards you on a personal level, but in relation to you and your ancestors. Because what you might need to do for your ancestors in this period might be different than what I need to do for my ancestors in this period. So, really, me as an individual, I'm still dictated by the blood that flows through my veins, meaning that I'm only here because of what's before me. So whatever's before me still has an influence in my life. That's why I can give honor to the ancestors, because it's the ancestors who allow us to even become. Like earlier when we were giving like our backgrounds and our history of how we got to the Earth Center, really it could say yes, it was me all along looking and searching. Yes, those are my decisions, but it's because I took the time to do that, that what's before me, what's in my blood, put certain things in front of me for
That's
me to
right.
be able to ascend to a certain path. So it's only right that me now as the individual think communally and think, how can I now fit into what they have put me into? How can I now fit into what I need to do in order to not build myself now, but build what's behind me? Because even what's behind me is something I will be, because I will be behind someone else.
That's right.
So it's more about preparation, to see far, to understand. I need to fit into this rhythm, into this cycle. I need to do what I need to do in order to make sure that what's behind me is strong and stable, because I'm going to be ahead in the next coming cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Because now we're even entering into reincarnation, which I think would be a whole nother kind of talk.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I hope that answers the question.
That was a great answer. And that was a good question to ask. Understand that we are a communal people. So how do you fit in? And what you're building behind you is in front of someone else. And what someone in front of you is building behind them is what's in front of you. So you build behind you and you build in front of you. It's a and and that again is a cycle. I hope that answered that question. I really like that perspective. I before we get to this question, someone asked the question, is this just for Black people? Oh, are you saying this is only for Black people? No, I'm not saying this is only for Black people. I am saying African people were the ones who African people were here first. People can like these facts or not. And I have no feelings either way if you don't want to accept them, because that's you denying facts. African people were on this planet first. Therefore, we had enough time not to write math, not to write science, not to write language, but to decode the rhythm of nature and the formula, if you will, for how nature is moving. Now, that's a very large, broad brush, because nature encompasses everything. So I'm being general and broad brushing on purpose. Okay. A part of us being able to decode it and to see is to see the cycles. That's because we were here the longest and we had enough time to see what was happening, create writing, because that's what we did that first too, and be able to pass this information down from generation to generation, so that someone in the future, because remember, you're building in front of you, which is something that's behind someone else, passing that information down so that someone can say, hey, I see a cycle. Okay, this cycle was in rhythm with nature, which nature is rhythm, and we were able to write this down, and then we're able to see it. So now anyone can follow the rhythm of nature. You don't have to just be the people who were able to decode it, which is African people. You can just be a person. You can be anyone. So no, we're not saying this is just for Black people. We're not saying this wouldn't work for Black people. As a matter of fact, if we all follow the rhythm of nature, we would be in a better position than we are now. Okay, so I hope that answered that question. And we have another one. We're winding things down. I can tell this is people would ask questions all night long. This next question is, can you talk about the Kemetic perspective on zodiac signs?
That's a good one. So again, it keeps coming back to this idea of the energies and the realities that we're doing our best to fit into. So the zodiac signs, right? As we know it today, you know, I would be, my birthday is January 1st. So I would be a Capricorn. You know, what that means about me, maybe I could say it's the same for a lot of people, you know. I watched this funny video not too long ago. I believe it was on Instagram or something like that. You know, I was scrolling and this guy, he's doing stand-up comedy and he's on the stage and he asked this woman, you know, what's your sign? And she says something like she's a Taurus or something like that. And he says, oh, so you like this and you like that and you like this and you like that. All of that's correct, right? And she's like, yeah, you know me, you got me, you got me. You know, so then he asked another person, and then he asked them to ask him what his sign is. And you know, he says, oh yeah, I'm this, right? I'm Gemini, whatever he says. And then you know, they explain and oh yeah, it makes so much sense. You seem like a Gemini. He's like, I'm lying. And then everybody's like, oh, so it's you know, it's interesting in the modern world. It's starting to become this thing where astrology is used as this sort of predetermined personality trait that everyone that is born in a certain month or in a certain period will have. When we're all different, we all come for different reasons. If we're spiritual beings, if we understand that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, then we have to know that, you know, our energies will be different inherently. We come from different people. Think about all the combinations of people that it took to get to you. Don't you think that if all of those people are a part of the reason why you're here, then you wouldn't take maybe a little bit of all of those different personalities, those different energies? So it would be very redundant to think of ourselves in that way. Um, so our Kemetic perspective on the astrology, right? So there is in each month of the calendar, you can see for the first month of the Kemetic calendar, the name of the month here is Tehuti, right? But then there's a description up here of the divinity or the Neter or the God that presides energetically over this month, this 30-day period. So for Tehuti, it would be Aishat, right? And she's very well known, you know, under other names, Aset, Isis, things like that. So in the Kemetic paradigm, that energy that's presiding over that month will sort of it will have an effect on who you are, but we don't really subscribe to any sort of, you know, preordained character traits that come with being born under the month of Aishat. And it is real because there's a star that's in the sky. There are multiple stars in the sky. that are projecting energies at that specific time over that 30-day period that make it, a specific point in time. But we don't necessarily, uh, use it in that way, that same way that the zodiac is looked at or, conceptualized in the modern world. I don't know, Kajzrimem, if you have anything else on that.
It's a good question. Um, the interesting part about it is, I mean, when we talk about the zodiac, we're really talking about the Greco-Roman astrology, and just like how they kind of stole the calendar, but they have to make up all these scientific and precise mathematical equations to make it seem like they know exactly what they're talking about. They also had to come up with a kind of divination system to make it seem like they know what they're talking about. But when looking at the human being as an individual, like my brother said, we all come as like spirits, and each spirit has a specific destiny, has a specific goal in relation to what they need to further in their own bloodlines. And the time we're born does dictate a lot in our lives. But now, if we understand that time is a specific rhythm, and if we understand that in looking at rhythms and cycles, what we're talking about is looking at our positioning in time and space in relation to the earth, in relation to the rest of the celestial bodies, and that these celestial bodies have energetic effects. Now, you have to talk about not just the month, but there's nature, which is something that is ruling over everything. Now, we have divinities or neters that govern every second, every minute, every hour, every day, every month, and even the year. So the time when somebody is born, it gets a little bit more complicated to really like kind of like give just a general kind of, oh, you're an Aries, so that must mean you're like this. It gets too complicated because every individual has a specific destiny, and then there's specific energies in relation to when, but not just when they were born, where they were born. Because where you're born has an energetic effect on you as well. And the hour you were born, the minute you were born, the second you were born, all these things come into play. And to really have a deeper understanding of this, we have to know that where we're born in respective to location is still dictated by the fact that you're born on the earth. So the earth has what we would call the memory. So to truly understand yourself and know, like, I guess you would say, all of these traits that everyone talks about with the zodiacs, you would have to be able to tap into that memory of the earth, which will bring us back to what my brother was talking about before with the earth energy readings. And these readings are very vital because in Kemetic like culture and lifestyle, people get readings regularly because you have to check your energies all the time. It's like something it's just a cultural thing because we come from the earth, we eat from the earth, and we die on the earth. As much as the rest of the celestial bodies have an energetic effect on us, it will never trump the energetic effect that the earth itself has on us. So I think that's where the big piece in astrology is kind of like has the discrepancy. The fact that they do not count the earth as being part of the astrology. Once you cut out the earth, you're cutting out a gigantic piece to the puzzle. So yeah, that's kind of our perspective on it. So we don't just go based off of the month. It has a lot of different factors to it, and most of those factors still have to correlate with even what the earth is dictating or what the earth is saying.
Yeah, and just to drop one little small gem behind that, and you learn a lot more about this in the initiation. There's a dialogue, right? When we're talking about astrology and we're talking about stars, we're talking about these energetic effects that are coming from these other celestial bodies. Like my brother was saying, the Earth is one of those, and we happen to be on it. So if you see maybe, let's say, just to be very simple about it, right? If you see the moon, right, and you see the sun, and you see the other planets, you we're not seeing necessarily, like, we're not seeing life forms on those other planets. Um, we don't necessarily know if they're there, but from what we can see, we just see the planet, right? So it places us in a very interesting place as far as trying to orient ourselves in space and time. You know, if there's a dialogue that's happening between you and I, there must also be a dialogue that's happening between the moon and the sun, the the sun, the moon, and the earth, right? The earth and all of these other celestial bodies. But you know, we're on the earth. So whatever the sun is saying to the earth and the earth is saying back to the sun, it has to take into account all of the things that I'm doing on the earth, all the things my brother is doing, all of the things Abu is doing to send that report to the sun about what's going on, right? It's not, the earth just doesn't have itself to report or talk about. It has all of these other, moving parts to talk about. So we're a part of that dialogue. So that's a very important part, in our understanding of, astrology and, space and time. So yeah.
Yeah, to even understand the celestial bodies, we have to notice, because even going back to the Nile, for them to know or understand the Sirius, they had to know and understand their environment first. So it all starts with the earth. So you can't really cut the earth out. And to cut the earth out is almost like you're cutting out your umbilical cord before you even like are born. It doesn't really make sense. I think you're muted, sister.
I'm muted. Yeah. I hope that people understand that everything is intertwined, in not intertwined, but there's a little bit of feedback. Kenibashu, I don't know if you can
Is that
maybe
me?
turn the mic on and turn it back off or something, or there are two devices nearby. Okay, cool. So everything is a cycle and everything is interconnected. There's not just like this linear, non-interactive like space. That just doesn't happen. Not with us and not with the earth and not what our ancestors witnessed and recorded. Okay. Okay. So we're gonna wind some of this down with our guests, and towards the end of Tuesday Talk is when we have the barrage of questions, and at that point, that's when you've got to reach out to them yourself and email and check out the website and see what the services are offered from our guests. It happens every time, and I'm glad. That means you guys are engaged, and I want to thank you guys for being that engaged with it. What I do, just for both of you, I will get your contact information that you've given me and maybe some more that kind of came out of this particular Tuesday Talk. And what I'll do is I go back into the place where I advertised for this Tuesday Talk, and I update and put the contact information there. But in as much, uh, I know that there's initiation that's starting for the Earth Center. So if you want to kind of go into what your initiation is, how people can find you, um, and how it relates to the Dogon tribe. I do want to bring that part in because that's a very key piece to the Earth Center. So if you could actually start with your connection with the Dogon tribe, and then segue into initiation.
So to talk about the Dogon tribe, when we say Dogon, I know a lot of people usually think about the one particular group that's in Mali, but Dogon is kind of like a umbrella term. There's many different branches, many different, I guess you could even say tribes, many different lineages that can be considered under Dogon. And to say Dogon, what we're really talking about is like landlord. That's the meaning of the word Dogon, like the lords of the land, or the ones who've like mastered the earth. And the Dogon are really the original inhabitants of what we're now calling Egypt today, or Kemet, those regions of northeast Africa, north southeast Africa, those regions. And the Dogon are a group of people who migrated from those areas during the time of colonialism, during the time of, Roman rule, religion, all these different things that were, taking place. So they moved and they took all of the knowledge and information and they went to West Africa and they spread all throughout West Africa. You can find them not just in Mali, but Burkina Faso, Togo, Ghana, Nigeria, all over. And really, they're just the wisdom and knowledge keepers of what we consider to be like our ancient kind of history, or ancient philosophies, our ancient sciences, our ancient practices. So, in a nutshell, that's who the Dogon are. And our organization was founded by one of the Dogon high priests. And Kenibashu, you want to get into?
So yeah, again, Prophet Nebnabala Musa Moro Denibig is a high Dogon priest who was born in the land of Burkina Faso. And basically, the story goes that he is born into the culture. He is steeped in the culture from the very young ages of about 7 or 8 years old. He was taken into the initiation camps, went through various vigorous, very ordered, and very clean, processes that taught him everything he needed to know about the work that his bloodline does. So the name Naba is even referenced in the Bible as the ones that really understood what was going on, really had the understandings of how to survive, in nature and what to do. They were some of the only people that the people in the main characters of the Bible who were they were going to them for advice. The Nabateans is what they call them in the Bible. So Naba is a bloodline that's a part of the Dogon tribe. So as he's going through all of those initiations and things, he gets to a point where he does reach a very high level and he starts traveling. He starts traveling to do health consultations, to do healings, to bring knowledge to different parts of the world. And in his travels, he ends up in Chicago, and he sees this, the state of our people, and not just our people. I would even make it a very important point to say that he just saw the state of people, period, in the world. And he went back to those elders that taught him and taught all of those, before him. And he went respectfully and ask for the permission to bring the rite of passage into the West, bring the body of knowledge that's been so, you know, beneficial to all of humanity for thousands and thousands of years. And that's what he did. So he came back to the West. He came back to Chicago and founded the Earth Center in the late 90s. And you can say that the rest is history. So that's really our connection to the Dogon. We really do our best to bring honor and dignity to the Dogon by making sure that the ones who have given it to us, that's who we're showing our respect to. And we're making sure that their name is clean. So that's really the Earth Center's connection to the Dogon tribe.
So, Merrick Hara says this initiation is the same initiation that has been passed down for thousands of years. That's something that I remember Tipsa saying last year, and I was like, wow, that is awesome. And it's been uninterrupted the entire time. And I remember that. Like, it's just that is what it was. We say it is what it is what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And to use some Black American vernacular, that's super dope. That's dope right there. Okay. It's uninterrupted. That stuck with me. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you guys back here. Now, listen, I'm a priestess in the shrine of Ma'at. It's Kemetic spirituality. And as I've said before, and as I said to our guests beforehand, you know, African spirituality is African spirituality at its core. And if it's practiced the way our ancestors did it, the differences are just basically regional and inconsequential, because the paradigm and the perspective is the same in terms of being a part of the cycle of nature that these two brothers explained so eloquently tonight. So if you're interested in initiation with the Dogon tribe, I'm sorry, with the Earth Center, please go to their website. First of all, it's beautiful. Just go there, just look at it. Go to the website, see what they have. I've been there before. I've read every single page, and it's really good it's just comforting to know that the family is out there, okay? And you're not alone, and it's okay to look at other places and spaces to see where you fit. If you fit in the shrine of Ma'at, you fit in the shrine. If you fit at the Earth Center, you fit at the Earth Center, and other places that have an African spiritual center and a Kemetic spiritual center. Okay, but for me, I definitely I was looking for Black God. I was looking for, you know, when it was just African people and God. What was that conversation? What was that? That's what I was looking for specifically, and I feel I found it with Kemetic spirituality. When I want to connect to the divine, that's what I do. When I want to connect with the ancestors, my altar looks very much like like a West African spiritual practice. It looks a lot more West African than it does Kemetic. So find what works for you. Please check out the Earth Center. This might be a good fit for you. Not to taking anybody anywhere, but as Black people looking for the truth, we have to deal with this nonsense every day when we walk out of our homes. You should be wrapped in what you need to get through that and thrive in it and be the example for that next person looking for Black God. When they see you, they know you got something. Just like when I saw in Tepe and Nika, I was like, whatever that is, I want some of that. Whatever. I'm about to find out. And I went right to her. Okay. So I want to tag some of the spaces some of the comments that had information on initiation. This initiation was passed down, but there was one that said it started Saturday. Is that correct?
Yeah, the 11th, February 11th, at the temple in Fort Lee.
There it is.
Yeah. Yep. So that'll be somewhat of a, you could say, an information session where we'll talk a lot about what the initiation offers, like I was talking about in the beginning, the 3 classes. We'll go through some of the, you know, formalities about setting up classes, how long the classes last, what the requirements are as far as, you know, a plethora of things. So yeah, if you're interested, please do come out on the 11th to check out what we have here at the Earth Center. We're more than, you know, glad to have you all. You know, to be welcomed and to really take part in something that's revolutionary. You know, this hasn't always been here for us to do. You know, this work hasn't always touched, you know, been able to touch all of us in this way
Mhm.
within these spaces. So it's important, you know. So please do come out. You know, we're waiting for you.
Okay. I just want to wrap up a couple comments. Infalme Natur Jelly. What exactly is the Earth Center? Came in late. Recap, please. My brother, we've been here all night. We've been here since 7. We've been here for 2.5 hours. It's worth it for you to look at it again. There are a lot of people who watch these Tuesday talks twice. They watch first just to watch, and then they go back again and take some notes. Okay, the Earth Center, it's the earthcenter.org, correct?
Yep,
So
www.theearthcenter.org.
So if you want to have a website information on it, go to www.theearthcenter.org, but also replay back this Tuesday talk because it's most certainly worth it, my dear. Okay. So, and then Marikara said, why do people act like West African spirituality is so different from Kemetic spirituality? And that's because part of that is they believe that ancient Kemites weren't African. A part of them doesn't believe that. They were. It was us, period. And if we look at the three of us here on the screen, we have different hues and shades and just undertones and all the things that just add so much variety to the look of African people. So when you look at certain depictions, even the ones that these white folks didn't lighten, because they'd be up in there lightening it, all right, you see some depictions where the women look like me, caramel color, and then you see like Rameses II's wife, his favorite wife, Queen Nefertari, she had the darkest of darkest skin, just like you see walking down the street here in America. Okay, so people want to separate Kemetic spirituality and West African spirituality, like West Africans are the real Africans and the sub-Saharan Africans are the real Africans. No, all the Africans are the real Africans. Everybody on the continent. Okay, that was our continent, and we existed before anyone else existed. There wasn't even anybody else to compare us to. So when people say that, it's because they are trying to pretend that there's a different type of African. Just because we have all of the shades and the hues and the undertones and the features and the hair textures and the eye colors, that's because we birthed humanity. So we have all this genetic variation. It doesn't make anybody more or less African. So if anybody got their feelings hurt, you need to be more in touch with the facts. If what I just said hurt your feelings. Okay. Now, I'm not talking to Mary Kyra because I know you know. I'm just saying to answer your question for the people who don't know and who felt some type of way about what I just said. So I just want to make that clear. And also when I said my altar for my ancestors looks more West African, because there are just different not mythologies, but different names, slightly different altar items you might use, but it's connecting to the same divine, it's connecting to the same earth, it's connecting to the same rhythm, and that's what it is. So yeah, so for me that works for me. That works for me. That always works for me. And I you have to make your practice your own, because this is not religion, this is not dogmatic, this is spiritual for you. And before colonization and before the disconnection from the continent, there was no shrine of Ma'at, there was no the Earth Center, because you had your altar in your home and you lived in a community that was in touch with nature, in alignment with it, in the cycle, in the rhythm. You had it at home and it was within you. And basically, to say something your grandmama would say, you knew how to behave, because we all lived by the code of Ma'at. We lived by that. We were in balance and in harmony. Okay. So yeah, so there's no difference between Kemetic and African spirituality. It's just a slightly different iteration of it. So I just want to wrap it up. We have the Earth Center has different locations where they have different institutions. And if you go to the earthcenter.org, you'll see it on that beautiful front homepage that they have. Okay. So can someone drop the Cash App? I want to tag that. and leave that up. And yeah, it says the Neteru and Orishas parallel for the most part. They absolutely do. They absolutely do. Can we drop the Cash App for the Earth Center one more time?
Yeah, I'll just say it. It's two things I want to just drop before we go to. But the Cash App is, the money sign. There it is. Somebody got it. Thanks, Jason. So yeah, the one thing I just wanted to say before we get out of here, I've been doing a little bit of research on, some revolutionaries and things like that, and James Baldwin has been coming up a lot. And one of the things that he made very apparent, and I think it's important to talk about within our talk about time and space and calendar and just how colonization has, affected so many things. He was having a talk with someone and he said that inherently the work that someone who's colonizing someone else does, it affects the person who they do it on in a specific way. But then what's very interesting is the effect that it has on that person themselves, because they themselves understand the agenda behind it, and they know that they're using it, that and that sense of uh, trickery on themselves at the same time. Because what you want for someone else is this is a part of the ancestral knowledge. What you want for someone else is what you will get. So the effect that it has on you yourself when you perpetuate a certain form of colonization, that's really what we need. It's a danger that we can get away from by pointing the finger or looking at someone else and saying that they're doing the evil. But just as soon as they're finished doing it, it might just be in your heart too. So I think we have to be very, vigilant and just always remember that that job of colonization has been done on us.
Mm-hmm.
At this point where we're working from and trying to get back to our ancestral paradigm, we have to be very careful not to become the colonizer ourselves, because we already are. But we don't want to touch something that now we have, that's from our ancestors, and perpetuate it in a way where we're doing that same work that the colonizer has done before, just with a different flavor.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that that's powerful, and it's something that, we need to. I'm wishing everyone the strength and the courage to look within themselves to be able to find that and try to get rid of it.
That's an important charge. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Would you like to say something before we close out?
Yeah, I would just say that, it was a pleasure to be on here, and this was a really good build. And, it's always good to see people coming to have some form of enlightenment, people wanting to honor their ancestors, honor the blood that flows through them. Because, I can't stress this enough. When it comes to colonialism, really kind of Kenibashu really just opened up the doorway for it. I just want to say something really small on it. When it comes to colonialism, we really have to really think and think hard and look at ourselves and then see where that colonialism lies. Because we talk a lot about decolonization, but what does that look like? We have to now start to think and look at life from the perspective and the eyes of our ancestors. And that's going to be very difficult to do because we've been raised by colonization. But it's time for us to not decolonize, because before you can decolonize, you have to re-indigenize yourself, because you don't want to now go and try to decolonize and then you're looking at things from a colonial perspective, and then you end up being a colonizer yourself. So it's very important that we re-indigenize our minds. And I just want to leave that with everybody in the audience. And I hope everybody has a beautiful and blessed night. And may your ancestors visit you in your dreams and wake you up in the morning.
Oh, I love that. I love that. May your ancestors visit you in your dreams and wake you up in the morning. And with that, I want to thank everyone who participates in Tuesday Talk and making this a powerful venue. And I want to thank our guests from the Earth Center who've come here to give us their knowledge. I'd like to thank Kajzrimem and Kenibashu for being here. I love your perspective. Everybody was like, I love the calm brother speaking. I think people really like the energy, the way that it's delivered, and I do as well. So thank you so much. Yes, Tef Newt Rob Velotis said powerful, very powerful. And I'm going to leave it with that. Powerful. And I will thank you again. I got some donations. Thank you for the donations that I got. Please continue to give donations to the Earth Center as well as to Abut Sashat. We don't do this for money, but we need money to do it, as one of our priests in the shrine says. Thank you so much for being here, brothers. I hope to see you soon. I will be getting my calendar soon. It keeps you in tune to the rhythm of nature and in life. So please get your calendar, and I will see you next Tuesday. Peace and love to the family. I will see you next Tuesday. Shem Ma'at.
All right.
Wow.